Amen. Let's give our apostle a round of applause and thank God for her. Well, we can do better than that. And we thank God for our senior pastor and then all of our pastors. Amen. Certainly thank God for you today. For just getting some assistance from handing these out. Amen. I promise you to be seated. Amen. And I will say, as we're handing these out, as Town Bank has shared with us, I will say to please get a POD. Yes, sir. I'm gonna keep going. To please get a POD. It makes it much easier. It makes it much easier in the process of death and dying.
I agree right there.
Amen. Amen. That's better. Amen. And as the forms come out, I will say that any questions you have, just ask. You can stop me at any point and ask, and we'll go over our topics. But I do want you to know that the Bible tells us in Ecclesiastes 3 that we are born and we're going to die. Amen. Apostle shared with us last night that though some may be caught up, but some will go, amen, by way of death. Amen. So I want to say to you again that it is very important, amen, to pre-plan. And if you look at your brochures that are coming out, we're going to go over those, and I want you to stop me at any point if you have any questions, amen, because it'll help you, help us, amen? So why do we pre-plan? Because pre-planning eases the emotional and financial burden on your loved ones. It ensures your final wishes are honored by locking in today's prices to avoid future inflation and prevent potential conflict or confusion amongst family members. And that is what happens oftentimes when you're making funeral arrangements. I've had the sheriff department in funeral arrangements. I've had to have the police in funeral arrangements because people simply do not have, as I always say, their business together. And so you want to make sure that you plan today to give your family peace of mind. I always say at sunset. Amen? And so you lock in today's prices, and it prevents conflict between family members. Well, who's in charge? This was, you heard Town Bank talk about beneficiaries, and we're going to cover some of that today. The beneficiary is very important. Know who your beneficiary, who is going to better handle your processes when you pass from this life to the next. Know who's going to handle that for you. Know who's in place. Know who can handle it. You know, we can look at our children and we can say, well, I know this was going to do this is going to handle this. You know who you can trust with your final arrangements. So pre-planning also gives you peace of mind knowing that everything will be handled exactly the way that you desire it to be. And believe it or not, people come in, they plan their services, and when they pass, when they come back, I know everything that they desire, everything they wish. And so that way, nobody has to say, well, we're going to change and do this. When you come in and make arrangements, when you come in to pre-plan, you make arrangements. When you come in, you can plan it the way you want it to be, exactly the way you want. I want this to be this way. I want this one on the program or that one. And there will be no confusion in the end. And it's important for us to do that. Amen? It is sad, and I will say this, in our community, it is sad, and I say this in all transparency, in the black community, we have more confusion in funeral services than we do in any other culture. Because we simply do not have our stuff together. So what is a pre-arrangement? Pre-arrangement involves selecting your funeral preferences in advance. Choosing between burial, cremation, your type, style of service, whatever you want the band to play, you want the horse and carriage, you want the motorcycle to carry you, whatever you so choose, that's why you pre-plan, so everyone else in the room will know exactly how you wanted your services to be, right? So you can go cremation, and I'll say this, cremation does not mean that you do not have money. Right? It is another form of disposition. And when I say disposition, burial is a form of disposition. They have water disposition in there. They have burial at sea. for dispositioning. Well, we've had some that you have to place cinder blocks in the casket. You take them out to sea. Some people love to fish. They say they don't want to be buried at sea. So we take them about 3 nautical miles off the coast. We drop the casket in the water. That's buried at sea. Some people that are in the military, Navy, they like those types of services. So whatever church service you so choose is why you pre-plan. Cremation. We frown on cremation, but I'll say this, and I'm going to give a couple, without giving names, I'll give a couple of demonstrations, or I'll give a couple of things that happened in the funeral home. I had a family come in about a year ago, and these are real stories. To come in about a year ago, they sat to the table, they had about $150,000 in life insurance. She planned a lavish service. Everything that she wanted. Her sister went outside, called the insurance company, and she came back in and said, her name, she says, the insurance lapsed. He borrowed all of it off, and there's only about $20. And so she had to regroup at this point, and we're going to get to Cash App and all that other stuff, for God's sakes. What is it? Not Cash App. GoFundMe. Oh my God, we'll get to that. But she had to, at that point, she had to come to herself and understand that if I don't have these money for these services, I'm going to have to go a different way. And I often say this as I do these seminars in our churches, because it's real. We have cell phones. If you go to the cell phone company, get your cell phone, they put you on a payment plan now. But those cell phones, those iPhones that we go get, they're about $2,000 altogether. They charge you about $30-some within your bill. Y'all do know that, right? Yes. Do you know you can get a $100,000 insurance policy at the age of 25 and 30 years old for that amount? You can get $1 million at that age. Life insurance. When I say life, I'm talking about whole life. Because the difference between whole life and term life is whole life builds equity, it builds value. You can borrow it off whole life. That don't mean take it all, because when you pass away, guess what? It's gonna all be gone. But it grows value, it builds equity. And so at the time of passing, when you sit down to the table, you may have purchased $10,000. But when the family receives the check, they call back and say, Carlos, Mr. Riddick, I just got a check for, the service was, let's say the service was $12,000. I just got a check for $60-some thousand. It's because it has grew that much. That's whole life insurance. Term life, listen to this, does not build equity. It goes to a certain age. So if you outlive the policy, when you come into the funeral home to sit down and make arrangements, the policy will not pay. So if it's term 70, if they come in and say, oh, we can give you $1 million, term 70. If they do that, listen, you can get it, but guess what? If you die at 71, it's over. Nobody benefits from that. So you have invested in it, and it'll be cheap, it'll be about $25, $30, and you'll be thinking you got something. And then when you pass away, the family sits at the table, and now they have to make another decision on how they're gonna handle your arrangements. So it allows your family to focus on honoring your memory instead of you having to make hard decisions. And this is a good point I want to raise now. Power of attorney. I have this situation right now. Young man at the funeral home right now with power of attorney. Power of attorney, and I want y'all to hear this, dies when the individual dies. You are not the power of attorney in death. You are not in charge. So you don't trump the children, you don't trump the wife. And I have that situation right now. Family called, the sister said, I'm gonna do it the way I'm his power of attorney. I'm gonna do it the way I want to do it. I said, well, I hate to disappoint you, but when Mr. William passed yesterday, your power of attorney died along with him. So you're gonna have to just put that back in your safe. So that's what happens. We have to understand, just because you go get POA papers, you can handle that stuff in life. but in death you cannot handle their affairs. Amen? So I hope this is good to us, because this means the individual with the POA cannot make funeral arrangements once the person has passed away. Instead, the legal next of kin. So listen at this. You pass away, there's no legal next of kin. So you have a niece or a nephew that is in charge, right? You have to remain in the morgue, listen, for 10 days. You become now property of the state. They will turn your body at that time over to the funeral home, or over to now the niece becomes, or the nephew becomes the legal next of kin. You understand what I'm saying? So you have to remain there until they release you and says, well, now you can take charge or custody of your uncle, because now they become the legal next of kin. That's why it's important for us to not just look at POA paperwork, but to have what? A healthcare power of attorney. You can make decisions in life and in death with the healthcare power of attorney. And we're going to get into that point. Ensure you have a clear will that your chosen representative is legally designated to act on your behalf. Wills are important. State Employees Credit Union, I know they're in North Carolina. I deal with them a lot, but they have just created a great plan. They do living wills now. 250 for individual, 500 for husband and wife. Credit union, banks offer, and that's one thing I didn't ask Cam, and they probably do offer living will and testaments. It is important to have a living will. The will trumps everything else that people may try to bring in the funeral home to handle your arrangements for you. So it's good to have a will. GoFundMe is not, Apostle said that last night, it's real though. GoFundMe is not insurance. You notice you have some instances where GoFundMe will be filled with money on certain individuals. Right. And certain individuals people contribute none to. When a family comes in and make arrangements, they tell me, they say, Mr. Riddick, we have a GoFundMe up. I just dropped my head. I said, oh my God. In my spirit, I'm saying, oh my God, what have I got myself into? It is not insurance. That's right. And we use GoFundMe to bury our loved ones. To me, I'm going to say it in this room because it is embarrassing. Yes, it is. It is. And it is not reliable or guaranteed solution for covering funeral expenses. That's right. I'm serious. It's not. Often these campaigns, they fall short and add unnecessary stress, because you go back and look at it, you're saying, I put amount that we need to raise $8,000. And then we put that amount, and then you go back and look at it, it's only $300, and now you're really stressed. Because you say, I'm not going to meet the deadline. I'm not going to be able to bury my loved one. What am I going to do? It is not insurance. So by planning ahead, you eliminate financial burden on your family and ensure that your arrangements are funded and in place. Listen, beneficiary and legal preparation. And you can ask me a question anytime. Anybody have a question, just stop me. Everyone should have a named life insurance beneficiary, just not with the funeral home, but even you heard with the bank. You need a POD. You need a beneficiary. And I would say this, when you come into the funeral home for your arrangements and we sit down to the table and we start preparing the vital statistic information, which is information we use that is pertinent for the death certificate, it is always make sure you know the right social security number. You're one number off, you're two numbers off. That is going to hold up your processes at any banks. Listen to me, any kind of estate planning procedures, any kind of probate courts, it is going to tie you up. So make sure, and people say, well, why do they want all that information? Because we're trying to help you have peace of mind at sunset. Because it's going to happen. So make sure you know who your designated beneficiary is. And I said it at the beginning, you know who can handle your affairs, and you know who cannot handle your affairs. And anybody just can't walk. I've had that instant many times. Well, we're just going to run down to the bank and get mama money, and we're going to be right back, and we're going to give you XX dollars. And they come back and say, we can't do anything, it's gonna have to go through the estate process. And so what happens is, yes, and I will say this, yes, the funeral home is the first entity that is going to be paid out of the estate. That is correct. But the funeral home does not want to wait 90 days to 6 months to get their money. That's right. Because things have to be paid for prior to the service, right? And so when the funeral director sits down with you and explains that it is not that he is trying to get your money. I hear that all the time. They're just trying to get our money. No, because if we don't get your money, we're not going to be able to put mom away properly. I'm serious. And they're not mad at you. It is a business. That's right. It's a business. That's right. Now, all are not honest. Let me say that. Not all are honest. But many have dealt with me, even in this room, to know that when we sit down to the table, we are fair and we are honest about what we say and what we do. Mm-hmm. That is a pledge that we take as funeral directors, that we ought to be honest with families, fair with families, consistent with families. And everybody, I don't care what dollar comes in the door, whether you pay a 5 or whether you're paying 15, you are precious to us. That's right. Amen. And it's real. This is real. So make sure you know who your beneficiary, a designated executive for your estate, and a healthcare proxy or medical power of attorney. Yes, sir.
I want to know how much does
a simple funeral cost? A simple funeral? I wouldn't say there's a such thing as a simple funeral. The average cost of a funeral, it is in this time that we live in all this different, at least get $25,000 worth of coverage. No, that is not the average. The average cost of funeral is about between $10,000 and $15,000 right now. I've been to funeral conventions. We go every year to national conventions, and we visit funeral homes that I've seen funeral directors charge. I mean, they're in, I could just say one right now in New Orleans that we visited last year. They are starting right at $20,000. But it's where you live. It's where you live. And the price of everything is going up. Metal is going up. What is a casket? Metal. Everything is going up. Everything is getting higher. Nothing is getting cheaper. And so when we increase, and if you ever go into a funeral home, I want to say this to us. If you go to a funeral home and you ask a funeral director for a general price list, they are obligated by law to give you one. They are obligated by law to give you a GPL, which is a general price list, which expresses and talks to you about their prices, what they charge, right? So you will know what you are being charged for. It helps you, trust me, it helps you, because then you will feel like, as the consumer, that I'm not being cheated, right? And you will know what you're paying for. So when you sit down with your funeral director, whoever you choose, when you sit, you ask and say, may I have a GPL to complement my arrangements today? Because you want to make sure you're being charged correctly. All right? So let's move on, because I promise you, I'm not going to be before you long. A health care power, I want to stay there for a minute, proxy or a medical power of attorney. What do? Glad you asked. They make decisions at your death, in the hospital, that a child or somebody just can't walk in and say, pull the plug. We're going to pull the plug on mama. No, you're not. I have medical power of attorney. We're going to leave because we trust God. We believe God's going to raise them up. I'm serious. People will come in. You will get that daughter that come that ain't never been down. And she will come to their hospital and say, easily, we ain't going to waste no time. She tired. You don't know how tired she is. God might have another one with her. I don't just talk about death. I preach life. Amen. Because it's going to happen. Listen to this. There are those that take care of you in life, and there are those that take care of you in death. And you know who they are. Have a medical power of attorney. And it's only, you can draw up the medical power of attorney. You can get anything you want online right now for free. You have it notarized, you file it in the courts, and then they know who they are. And as Town Bank has said to us when they came in, It's only between you and that individual. If you, let me tell you where the confusion comes in. When everybody sits around the table and you started saying, well, I made this one, and I made, that's when the confusion comes. You know who they are. Just go ahead and designate who you want it to be, tell them who they are, and tell them to keep their mouth closed. And if they start talking, you're going to quickly find out that they're not the one. Because they're to handle your affairs when you leave here. And you will have affairs. Don't just think because you died stops. You still have to make appointments at probate courts. With those that have experienced this, you know you still have to have estate planning. You have to go meet with your clerk of court. Right? You still have to do those things. Business still has to be handled when you're in the ground. Don't just stop because the person stops.
That's right.
So it's good to have, and I'm going to break this point in, it's good to have a relationship with your funeral director. Because you can call them at any time. You know the calls I get that says, Carlos, I found a policy. Now this is what really gets me. Carlos, I found a policy on Mama. And it was back in 1950. I said, whoo! But can you help me file it? And you know what I'm going to do? Schedule an appointment, come in, help them find that policy, file it. And I will say this, your insurances that you have, check on them often, like you check your credit score. Because bigger insurance companies are buying out the smaller insurance companies. And just because you have Northwestern Mutual, I don't say that because I have a policy with them, but Northwestern Mutual buys out, they're a bigger company, so they buy out the smaller companies. So just because you have Colombian Life today doesn't mean that death is going to be Colombian Life. And they're not going to send you a letter and tell you that they who they were bought out by. Yes, ma'am.
Just like what you just said about the insurance policy and how it can change before and things like that. Say, for example, I made arrangements with you, got all of my affairs in order, and something changes. How does that?
When you say something changes, be more specific.
Maybe y'all went out of business. God forbid.
Okay. Don't plan on. Let's get one more. Another analogy. It's all right to laugh. Y'all know you're gonna laugh at a funeral seminar, didn't you? But no, you're right. If the funeral home goes out of business, what happens is when you make pre-arrangements and pre-needs, when a funeral home goes out of business, those funeral homes that are in the area, the State Board of Funeral Services, whether it's Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, whomever, are gonna transfer your pre-need over to the funeral homes that are within that area. They have an obligation to send you a letter to tell you I am in need, or you have your pre-need, this funeral home is closed, which they're gonna love to send you that letter. They tell you that a funeral home closed and we are in, now have your pre-needs. But in that letter they have to disclose you that you have the right, and we're gonna get to that point. I'll just mention it briefly here just a little bit. The money follows the deceased. Always remember that. Never go to a funeral home if you're not pleased and sit there and they're treating you any kind of way. Remember, the money, this is how I say it, follows the body. Okay? And when I say that, no matter where you can do your pre-need at A funeral home and Z funeral home, open up down the street, and you say, oh, I really like how their services are arranged. They're professional, do things right. When at death, you still leave it there. But at death, you tell the funeral home, A funeral home, we are going to use Z. And guess what they have to do? They have to prepare those pre-needs, send them over to that funeral home, and your services will still be honored with that funeral home. Always remember that. Okay? So don't just be held, I'm coming right to you, never be held captive. If you walk in there, they talking to you any kind, because management changes. And just because today you dealt with John doesn't mean that Henry's going to treat you like John treated you. And so you're saying, I'm just subject to this funeral home. I have to sit here and take it. No, you do not. You do not have to do that. The money follows the deceased. Question.
So, with that being said, I have two questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Does it matter per city, which funeral home? And when you say pre-planning, how long does that stay? Because I can go in and pre-plan today, but how long is that effective if I live another 40, 50 years? Is that always in place, and how is that?
I'm going to get to that point. I'm going to answer that question, but I will say about the city, it doesn't matter. North Carolina funeral directors have the authority to service families from Boone. I always tell them, they say, Carlos, you can come all the way here. I said, from the mountains to the coast, I can serve you. And we're currently working on Virginia. And so God is doing great things. And so I will say this, that and I'm going to get to your point, because we're going to talk about revocable and irrevocable. And that's going to help you better understand about how long does it stay in place. Because we can pre-plan, as you say here, and then we can pre-arrange.
That's right.
You can go in a funeral home and pre-plan, which means you're just saying pretty much, I want you to handle my stuff when I pass. But when we start talking about revocable and irrevocable, it's going to help those that are on hospice, those that are in nursing homes, how you keep your Medicare, your Medicaid. I'm going to show you how to do all of that in just a minute. Yes, ma'am.
You're talking about term life, term insurance.
Yes.
And you're talking about taking a loan and how that affects your payout.
Yes, ma'am.
There's two things: you can take a loan and you can take money out. Do both of those affect?
Yes. They both affect the amount that you take out at death. So her question was that does it affect, so if you could take out a loan or take money from the term or the whole life. So term life, you cannot borrow off a term life policy.
Right.
You cannot borrow because it is term 70, term 80, term 90. And I have seen it, we have seen it. 91 years old, and they come in and say, and I'm gonna tell you what, this is what gets me, they think they got something. When they come in, the children come in, the mama 91, and they bring that policy, and they say $150,000, and I look, and they say the birthday, and I said, 91. They said, what we gonna do? I said, let's talk again. Then you have to, I'm serious. It is real, right? So I'm going to come to that. So make sure you have a medical, those that can make decisions for you when you're laying in the hospital. Don't want to be laying there, right? But somebody has to know what to do. If you say, I don't want to be on life support. And then they say, well, keep them there. And they're telling you, and they've already expressed to you, I don't want to go through that. You know, if in the event that something happens, this is what I want done. And they can come in and say, hey, I'm the medical power of attorney. Those were mom's wishes. Those were dad's wishes, and we're going to follow through with them. Right? Okay. Is there another question I saw? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, what if, like you just said, you is in the hospital on life support, and then your health care, medical power of attorney, they pass while you're in the hospital.
So you always have a beneficiary. So you will have a beneficiary attached. Beneficiaries are very important. You have a beneficiary attached to your healthcare power of attorney. Okay? So a living will and last will. A living will outlines your medical preferences before death, such as, listen, resuscitation, I'm coming right to you, or life support decisions. Go right ahead.
If your life insurance policy changes in the future that you had mentioned a few minutes ago, are you still able to use it, or is there challenges with that?
No, there are no challenges. The policy number is going to follow. What I've seen done is they may keep the same policy number, but the name of the company may be 143682, and then if it's Colombian is in charge, then they'll put a C on the end.
That's right.
But it will still pay for your services. But always remember, I always say, just like you get up and check your account, check your policies, because they change, and you don't want to be caught with it in the end, right? So a last will and testament defines how your assets are distributed and can specify your funeral wishes. So a living will outlines your medical preferences, but a last will and testament defines how your assets are distributed. Who's gonna get what when you pass? It is important to do that. I'm serious. Because some people, all they want, I'm serious, is the car, or the clothes, or the jewelry. They had them conversations right at the table. Right while we sitting there, and I'm saying, oh my God, let's get her in the ground. And maybe y'all I'm serious, I hear it all. I have been to a house where the son came from New York City. Me and my friend went to a house, and the man came from the city. He came in the house. He said, "This is what I'm gonna do. I know what Mom wanted. I'm gonna get this house." And you know the couple that the husband passed, then the mom passed like 2 days later. And so he came in there. What he was gonna do? He said, "I'm gonna get my shotgun. I'm gonna kill everybody in here." He was serious. That's what I did. I take my little book bag when I go and meet with family. I put my little stuff up. And I said, when you finish in here, y'all call me, but I won't be back to this house. I seen it all. And when he said kill everybody, I was in there, so I was everybody. So I don't want Pastor Jennifer have to have peace of mind at sunset. So I said, I'm gonna get out of here because it's gonna be a bad day in paradise. I mean, no bad days. There are not supposed to be any bad days in paradise, right? But it's gonna be a bad day in paradise. But I hear it all, and you have to know, that's what I'm saying, you have to know who you want to handle your stuff. Because you got those children, let me tell you something, and you have children that they never talked about. And if that child, if you are the brother, and you're in charge of your sister, and she's never discussing you about a child, and that child comes forth, you now take a step back, and that child is in charge. I want to say this to us, though, in this room, and I say this with all transparency. If the child comes forth, this is for real. If the child comes forth, for God's sakes, if you have a policy, still allow that child to bury their mother. Well, I didn't know nothing about it, so I ain't gonna give them nothing on it. I hear it all the time. It's her problem now. But you have a $20,000 policy that you were gonna use anyway. The child didn't know anything about what was going on. When she found out, she did what she was supposed to do. She came forward. And I see that all the time. Well, it's on them now. I ain't doing nothing because they got a child. Well, what are you gonna do with the policy? It is a life insurance policy, not for you to party with. It is for you to bury. That's why it's called life insurance, to bury them with. And I see this all the time. The first thing I'm asked when I sit, I'm gonna tell you, I know the gift of gab when I sit to that table. When they sit at that table, Pastor Ron, they say, how we get a death certificate? I said, I know who got the money. But you see the next of kin struggling. And I know why you want a death certificate, because first of all, you cannot handle the estate affairs.
That's right.
You don't need a death certificate to show anybody, because you need an excuse saying that you came to the funeral. We have funeral director notes that we can give you to say you came to the funeral. The only reason you need a death certificate is to file insurances.
That's right.
So if you're sitting around a table and your loved one, and I hate that some of you about already been through that, and probably took around that, that's why they need that death certificate. How long do it take to get it? When they say that, I say, right? So let's move on quickly. Pre-need portability. Having a pre-need agreement at one funeral home does not bind you to that location forever. I said we will get to that. The funds follow the deceased, meaning your plan can be transferred to any provider, and you maintain the right to decide where your services will take place, even if you relocate or change preferences. Right? So this is what happens. Sometimes, and I see this a lot, if people transfer their pre-needs or their pre-arrangements to another funeral home, maybe that funeral home doesn't deal with Batesville Casket Company. Maybe they deal with Aurora Casket Company. So just because you chose, and I say a Primrose because it's only we would say this, right? Funeral, it's a beautiful unit. Right? It has the roses on it, it's really pretty. Right? It is. I like a Cadillac, hey. And maybe Aurora doesn't offer the Primrose, but they have something compatible right? But it's still in the gauge unit. We'll get into that in just a minute. But it's still in the same unit. And the funeral home says, I don't sell Batesville. But the funeral director has to make that disclosure to you. Hey, I don't do Batesville, but mom has a white and pink casket that she sells at other funeral home. And I'm going to compliment you. You know, I'm going to make sure that you have something similar to what you chose. And most times people say, okay, no problem. Right? So just be mindful. They're not trying to get you. Just we don't all use the same provider.
That's right.
Right? So know that. They're not trying to get you. And I hear that all the time. See what they're trying to do? Take my money. No. If it's still, when I say gauges are only the differences in the metal. Those that work in that know. A 20 gauge and an 18 gauge is the difference in the metal. Right? One is a thicker metal, one is a thinner metal. But guess what? They all do the same thing. And what's going to happen to all of them, and I'll be the first to tell you, eventually it's going to all deteriorate. Right? So, question.
I heard that you could order casket now. Does all funeral homes acknowledge
Do what now?
You could order casket and send them to the funeral home.
You can. Costco, Walmart, Amazon, but I'm going to advise against that because I hear that situation. You order the casket and tell me it's coming. UPS drop it off and it's banged and dinged up. When I unbox a casket at the funeral home, and people send me that, I call the family and tell them the dad's gonna be there because I want them to meet me, to see me unbox it. Because I don't want them to ever think that I would try to destroy mom's unit just so I can sell them more.